We are here to speak about migration from Python 2 to Python 3. First, I will present myself. I'm Philippe Boulanger. I'm working at InVivo, and I'm a C++ and Python developer since 20 years. And I'm lucky, I have several experiences in numeric and calculation, embedded programming, and in finance. So, about migration, there is some problem today. There is two versions of Python. Since 2008, there is Python 3 and Python 2. And now Guido van Rossum says stop. At January the 1st, we will stop in 2020. We will stop the version Python 2. So there is some impacts. And there is some impacts today. Django or NumPy has stopped or will stop their support for the version Python 2. So the migration for all websites, for example, which are using Django, has started. And Python 4 will arrive soon, and the gap between Python 2 and Python 3 is greater than the gap between Python 3 and Python 4. According to the knowledge we have today. Okay. And there is some new features which are present in Python 3 which are very interesting too, and we need to use them for web services, for example. Async.io, there is lots of conference during the 2 days and at the PyCon FR last month about Async.io, which is a very good API. There is some consistency tools which are added. Example, we can minimize the memory consumption in using generators. There is new tools like functional programming, which was enhanced according to Python 2. And there is some like things which can help us to have a better software. There is some difference, and one of the most important difference for the common user is print. They don't support that now. We need parentheses for a print function. I don't know why, because the print as a statement is less interesting than print as a method. Now we can use it with new parameters, redirect easily the output, and you can do lots of things very interesting. The raise statement has some change. It's not very important, but the syntax changed too. And then integers. And I think it's one of the big points of the change, because integer division changed according to the two versions. On the version 2, when we do 5 divided by 2, we obtain 2. This is the integer division. But in Python 3, we have a floating point results. And if we want the integer division, we will have to use the double symbol for the division. So that's the main problem for all calculation when you are doing the migration, because this is an hidden bug during the migration. So it's one point we have to be very sure that there is no regression. String change too. If you have a big application which are using lots of string in memory, in Python 2, there is two types of string, the standard string and Unicode. You have to use it specifically. But in Python 3, all strings by default are Unicode. So the memory consumption is more important. And you can use byte string in using the B before to have ASCII use. Then that's the part with generator. In Python 2, most of the containers have functions which are returning other containers. So there is memory allocation. And in Python 3, by default, you are returning iterators. This is a simple way and avoid memory generation. So it's faster and simpler to use. To be sure that for string we are agree, Unicode management in Python 2, we use that. But in Python 3, that's for ASCII call. So there is some difference between the method Unicode, which does not exist anymore in Python 3, in a standard way. There is a financial aspect to for migration. If I migrate today, I have a cost. This is an important cost according to the software to migrate. But migration will be easy at short term because you have a team which has to work on that. And there is few costs at long term because you will be able to use every new version of software which is amended with a security patch and other things. If you keep the version 2, you have no immediate cost, but you cannot use a security patch because they are not available on your version. For example, Django. Django, you are forced to use Django 1 and you cannot use Django 2. So in the middle and the long term, you will have EV costs which are not predictable today. The goal to have a Python 3 and no more Python 2, this is a statistic which came from October last year. There is 25% of software which are always in Python 2. And the repartition of the software depends on the type of software. Data scientists are more on Python 3 than web developers. First step when we will start the migration is to have, as soon as possible, non-regression test. Because when you start migration, you know when you start, but you have to know when you have finished. And to know if the migration is a success, you have to know if there is a bug inside. So, first step, is there any bug in the system? Are the performance better or at the same level than the version 2? What is the coverage of the test? Very important. Because if your coverage is under the 60%, there is half of your code which is not tested. So you will have problems in production. So we need indicators, KPI. First test you have to do a unit test for a function or a small part of code. You need to have unit test. It's an objective. An utopic goal is to have a unit test for all API you have in your code. This is utopic because most of the time there is lots of million of code line, and you cannot test every function. It's not possible, but this is a goal. Second step is to have functional test. Functional test is you have functionality which calls lots of API, and you need to test if that functionality is available. For example, you have a file consumer which have to fill data in a database, and then you have algorithm to treat the database data and generate reports. This is a full functionality, and you have to test from the beginning to the end. The objective is to cover most of the functionalities. It's not simple to do, but in using coverage tools, you can select the more important functionalities to have the best coverage. Be careful, the need of automated tests will increase with the program size. More you have line codes, more you will have automated tests. So, functional tests have two ways to do. Chain of API calls. So this is test you can easily automate, but there is some UI action. When you are testing some dialog box, for example, if you manage the parameters in a given order, you will select some events. But if you change the order of the box you fill, you will change the event, you will change the source code which is called, and you will have other function which can be called. So to manage GUI action, there is a way to automate. I give one example, UFT, which is only name is QTP, but there is several tools to do that. Qt is specific tools, but it's very important. And then you have a performances test, because when you do a migration, you change lots of things. You change the software, Python, you change libraries on which you are writing your code, and unfortunately, you have the risk that the way you call your API today is not efficient after. So you need to have performance test which allows you to be sure that there is no regression in terms of performance. You need to have you need to have load tests and to automate them as soon as possible. For the coverage, there is lots of software which are available. You can use them. That's an example of one coverage tools, and it allows you to have some statistic and KPI available, and you branch it in using your unit function, your functional test, and you will have the size of code which is really executed during your test. This is not a good statistic because it's more according to my experience. When we have less than 60% of code covered, we have very lots of chance of having bug during the delivery. And a good goal is to target 80% of covered code. It's a good goal. At that level, most of the principal, the main functionalities are covered, and you be sure that you can have hidden bug, but the main functionalities will be sure. For GUI test, don't forget that a human uses the GUI differently than an automated test. Automated test will be every order is every time the same. in GUI test, the user can do something, add a specific parameters in a box, or click on something, and it can create a chain of events which will crash your API. So automate test, but when you automate test, don't forget that you have to continue to have human test at the end for GUI environment, because the human changes behavior during the calls, and it's add a random part inside the test. So it's very important. There is lots of bugs which are found by humans and not by machine. The second aspect is the perimeter. I have a small story about perimeter. Some years ago, I have to build a migration from, this is a mix of C++ and Python codes, and I have to migrate it from Visual Studio 6 to Visual Studio 2010. And during the process, they add me lots of information, because I start with C++ and Python code. I added WX Windows. I added some external libraries, which I found it during the compilation, because when I migrate them, I don't have the license, I don't have the libraries. So perimeters is very important. When you start, you have an idea of what you have to migrate, but during the process you will find lots of things which can be different. And unfortunately, in some cases, during the migration of the software, they decide to change lots of other things. For example, they can change the DB version. They can change some OS support. In my experiences, I have to work on the migration, and during the migration they change the OS version, and they target new OS version which are not defined at the beginning. They can change some hardware processor, for example, or computer. They can change the Python distribution. Most of the time we use say Python, but they can decide to use other things. And they can change tooling according to licensing. So be careful to ask all the questions needed to define the environment in which you are working. Second step, you have the software, but what is on what modules, libraries is built your software? Because there is standard module, there is some modules which can be developed by the company, and there is lots of external modules. For example, NumPy, Django, and you have lots of things. So the first objective is to have a map of what is really loaded during the execution. To do that, you have a small tool which was added in Python 2, which is Module Finder. In using Module Finder, you will have a complete map of loaded module at execution time. It's very important because when you are using your test, in adding Module Finder in your test, you will find all modules which are really loaded. Even the modules which are created dynamically. Because in Python you can create a file which contains Python code and execute them after. So that is hidden in the code. You will not find today. But as it's created dynamically in using string, it can pass through your knowledge or the knowledge of other guys which are working with you, and you will lost some information during the migration. So knowing what is executed is very important. Then, what are the problems? When you have a module, there is lots of things which can appear. First, the module is not supported, not migrated. Second, there is some modified APIs, the name change. For example, URL lib, the name of the module change. And you can have some licensing problem because the migration need to buy a new license, and you need more information and more money to work. Then there is modules which are not written in Python. And now you have C++ compiler migration, because to be compliant with existing Python, you have to migrate the library code and using the same compiler that you use for Python. You have to port all C++ libraries or C libraries. You can have some tools problem in using Swig, for example. The Swig file can change the content during the migration. And you can have more license problem due to the tools you are using. Visual Studio, when you change the version of Visual Studio, you have to pay to have that. When you stop with that map, you can start a methodology to migrate. There is some steps you have to respect. In computer science, divide to reign is a big rule. The computer is not able to do everything at the same time. If you cut the task in subtasks, we can execute them. And for migration, it's the same thing. We have to divide the big software in small blocks. We can migrate separately. And to do that, we can use the map of dependency between the modules. For example, if you have several modules, external modules, you can migrate them separately and then build the migration of the module which depends on the previous module you migrate. So you can do step by step. It's very important. Don't do all the migration at the same time because you will have lots of problems. So start with the external code and then be careful of tools, compiler, integration tools, and external libraries. That's the first step. So what we can do when a library was ported or not? That's a question you will have to fix as soon as you find the problem. Take a new library, it's possible, but you have to rewrite some codes around this library. Port if the source code is available, port yourself the library, but it can have lots of problems to maintain the code. If the API change, what is the solution? Change the library, use the same library but rewrite the code to use the new API. If the licensing change, most of the time it's the reason which implies some decider to take the decision. Is there some constraint between modules you are using? As you know, there is some software which are built on modules, and there is some version of module which is not available for other version of module because they are not due to work themselves together. So be careful, there is some constraint, and at the end, if you have no choice, is source code available to rebuild yourself, the library. There is some help for the migration. because in starting with Python 2 codes, we can add some features of Python 3 directly inside the Python 2 codes to, for example, the division and the print function. This will help us to migrate step by step and test after each modification. We can test in using the test the unit test and the functional test. We can ensure that we found most of the bugs inside our code. The import function have a small change between the two versions. You can import directly the new feature in Python 2. And then for Unicode, you can add the Unicode string directly in Python 2. There is a way to add some Python 3 change inside Python 2 code in using 6. 6 authorized to use some Python 3 modules directly in Python 2. It exists, you can use it, but this is not my best choice. Then, when you are using the migration, you are started the migration, you can port your module in using 2 to 3. And it will change your code directly to have the new syntax. It will be helpful to simplify the work. And there is a way to use Python 2 libraries during a small time in Python 3 code in using 226. At the end, you have not finished. You have a software which will run, but you have to refactor your code to use the new features. For example, there is a new feature which is called scandir, which is better than listdir, which is more performant. So if you want to be to use the best technology, you have to factorize to refactor your code. So listdir you can change by scandir, and when you have a small test, you are 5 times better in terms of performance. And you can use the fstream since version 3.4, which is better than format function. Then you can use generators. Generators will allows you to use some syntactic sugar, like that. And it will help you to minimize the memory consumption. Comprehension containers were extended in Python 3, for example, for dictionary. And all code which is using loop can be rewritten to be simpler and more efficient. String format. In using the new feature, the fstring, it's more simple. It takes less code. Unfortunately, this method is better in terms of performance, but that method is better than format. You can use Numba. Numba was added in Python 2, but I think there is lots of more interesting function in Nuba in Python 3 than in Python 2. And it will be helpful to improve performances of computation code. And there is the cache strategy, which was a backport to Python 2, which allows you to, for some function which are recursive, like Fibonacci, to cache the results and to be more performant. Very interesting function. To conclude, be careful. As I said often, migration are like children. They are all different. There is no children which is the same as the previous. Split in steps your migration, and after each step, don't forget to test. You will find difficulties during the migration, but keep hope. And if you need, you can ask for help. If you have any questions.